The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched out like a massive bowl carved from white stone. Thousands of seats rose in curved tiers, each filled with delegates from across the galaxy. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime, converting hundreds of languages into something resembling understanding. At the center of it all, the council podium glowed with soft blue light. Ambassador John Carter sat in the human section, his hands folded calmly on the table before him. To his left, Lisa Grant shuffled through papers with practiced efficiency. To his right, Paul Rodriguez typed notes on his tablet, his expression unreadable. Around them, other human delegates maintained the same quiet composure they had shown. For months, the Zalari speaker stepped up to the podium, his tall frame draped in ceremonial robes that sparkled with embedded jewels. His voice carried across the chamber with the authority of someone who had never been told no. Esteemed members of the council, we gather once again to address the human problem. Their aggressive expansion continues unchecked. Their military build-up threatens peaceful species throughout the galaxy. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the alien sections. The Vec delegation nodded their large heads in unison. The Moravians whispered among themselves, their feathered crests rustling with excitement. This was familiar territory for them all. The Zalari continued, just last month, human warships were spotted in the Kepler system. They claim it was a training exercise, but we know better. They position themselves like predators, waiting to strike at innocent worlds. Carter's expression never changed. He had heard these same accusations dozens of times before. The truth was more complex, but the council had never shown interest in complexity when simple answers felt better. A Vec representative took the podium next. Her species communicated through a combination of sounds and color changes in their skin. The translation came out flat and mechanical. The humans refused to limit their military production. They build ships faster than any 3 species combined. This is not the behavior of a peaceful civilization. More nods, more murmurs of agreement. The pattern was always the same. Each speaker would present their grievances against humanity, building toward the inevitable demands that would follow. The Moravian delegates spoke with righteous fury. Human colonies expand into disputed territories without council approval. They ignore our carefully negotiated boundaries. They show no respect for galactic law or order. Grant leaned over to whisper something to Carter, but he shook his head slightly. There was no point in preparing a defense. The outcome had been decided long before this session began. Speaker after speaker took their turn. The Vorthan complained about human trade practices. The Crystalline Consortium accused humans of strip mining operations that damaged entire systems. The list of grievances grew longer with each passing hour. Finally, Council Chairman Vex Thaler rose from his elevated seat. His species looked almost human, except for the silver skin and eyes that held no visible pupils. The time for discussion has passed. The Council has reached its decision regarding the human question. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant hum of translation devices seemed to quiet down. Humanity will immediately cease all military production. Beyond defensive needs, Vex Thaler announced, all human colonies in disputed territories will be evacuated within 6 months. Human military forces will be reduced by 70%. Most importantly, all human government decisions regarding expansion, trade, and military matters will require council approval before implementation. The silence stretched on. These demands went far beyond anything the council had ever imposed on a member species. They were asking humanity to surrender its independence in all but name. Furthermore, the chairman continued, humanity will pay reparations to all species affected by their aggressive policies. The amount will be determined by a council committee and paid over the next 50 years. Carter felt Lisa tense beside him. Paul's typing had stopped completely. Around the chamber, Alien delegates watched the human section with satisfied expressions. They had finally put the troublesome humans in their place. Ambassador Carter, Vex Thaler's voice echoed through the chamber. The Council awaits humanity's response to these reasonable demands. All eyes turned to the human delegation. Cameras focused on Carter's face, broadcasting his reaction to billions of beings across the galaxy. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The proud humans would finally be forced to bow before galactic authority. Carter stood slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled. He reached for the papers on his table, gathering them into a neat stack. Grant and Rodriguez watched him, with expressions that revealed nothing. Ambassador Carter? The chairman prompted. Your response? Carter picked up his briefcase, placed the papers inside, and closed it with a soft click. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the silent chamber. Grant stood next, collecting her own materials with the same careful precision. Rodriguez followed, Suit shutting down his tablet and packing it away. Around the chamber, other human delegates began doing the same thing. This is highly irregular, Vex Thaler said, confusion creeping into his voice. The Council requires an official response to its demands. Carter walked around the table, heading for the exit. Grant and Rodriguez fell in behind him. Throughout the chamber, human delegates left their seats and moved toward the various exits with quiet efficiency. Ambassador Carter. The chairman's voice carried a note of panic now. You cannot simply leave without responding to the Council's decision. Carter reached the main exit, his hand on the massive door handle. The chamber had erupted in confused chatter as alien delegates tried to understand what was happening. Nothing like this had ever occurred in the Council's long history. He turned back to face the chamber one last time. Every alien eye was fixed on him, waiting for some explanation, some final human argument or play for mercy. We're done here, Carter said. His voice carried clearly through the chamber, without any need for amplification. The massive doors swung open with a deep groan. Carter walked through without looking back. Grant and Rodriguez followed, their footsteps echoing in the corridor beyond. The last human delegate exited through a side door, leaving only empty seats where the human delegation had been. The doors closed with a sound like thunder. The vibration seemed to shake the entire chamber, rattling alien delegates in their seats. The silence that followed was different from before. It felt heavy, loaded with implications no one quite understood yet. Vex Thaler stared at the closed doors, his silver skin shifting through several color patterns that indicated deep confusion. In all his years as chairman, no species had ever simply walked away from a council session. There were protocols, procedures, proper channels for everything. The Zelari speaker stood again, his voice uncertain. Perhaps they need time to consider. The terms? Humans are known for their stubbornness. But some of the more perceptive delegates had noticed details that troubled them. The human departure had been too organized, too smooth. They had not acted like a delegation caught off guard by harsh demands. They had acted like people following a plan. The VEC representative who had spoken earlier shifted her skin to patterns of deep concern. They took all their materials, every paper, every recording device. That is not the behavior of delegates planning to return. Across the galaxy, automated systems began broadcasting a simple message from Earth to every human colony, station, and outpost. The message was brief, containing only 3 words that would change everything. Operation Exodus, begin. Commander Jake Sullivan stood on the observation deck of Kepler Station, watching the organized chaos below through reinforced windows. A massive trading hub stretched out beneath him like a small city floating in space. Docking bays that had bustled with activity for 20 years now echoed with the sounds of systematic shutdown. His communication device buzzed with the same message every human in the galaxy had received 6 hours ago. 3 words that meant everything had changed. Operation Exodus begin. No explanation, no timeline, no questions allowed. Just orders that every human recognized as absolute. Commander, his aide approached with a tablet full of reports. The cargo manifests are complete. All essential equipment has been marked. For transport. Non-essential items are being left behind as planned. Jake nodded, still watching the activity below. Human workers moved with practiced efficiency, dismantling systems that had taken years to install. They worked in teams, each group focused on specific tasks that fit together like pieces of a puzzle. This level of organization could only mean one thing: Operation Exodus had been planned long before today. In the station's main commercial district, alien merchants watched in growing confusion as their human business partners closed shops and sealed storage units. The Vorthan trader who owned the Crystal Emporium approached every human he could find, demanding explanations. His translator struggled with his rapid, panicked speech. "Why are you leaving? We have contracts, agreements. The trade season has just begun." His multiple arms waved frantically as he spoke. "This makes no economic sense." The human shop owners gave polite but useless responses. Business recall, company restructuring, family emergency. None of it explained why every human business was closing simultaneously, or why they packed with such urgent efficiency. Dr. Rachel Brooks faced the hardest conversation of her career in the xenobiology labs of Centauri Prime. Her research partner, a brilliant crystalline named Zeph-9, had worked beside her for 8 years. Together, they had made discoveries that advanced understanding of genetic adaptation across species barriers. "I do not understand." Zeph-9's translated voice carried confusion and hurt. "Our research is at a critical stage. The protein synthesis project could revolutionize medicine for both our species. Why would you abandon such important work?" Rachel packed her personal research notes into sealed containers, each one marked with codes that would mean nothing to alien eyes. "I'm sorry, Zeph. The recall is mandatory. All humans must return to Earth immediately. But surely exceptions can be made for critical research? Our government would formally request no exceptions." Rachel's voice was firm, but not unkind. "I'm genuinely sorry. You're a brilliant scientist and a good friend. I hope you understand someday." Zeph-9's crystalline structure flickered with patterns that indicated deep distress. "Understand what? You speak as if this goodbye is permanent. Surely this is temporary? A political gesture that will be resolved through negotiation?" Rachel sealed the last container and looked at her friend one final time. "Take care of yourself, Zeph. Continue the work. You don't need me for that." She walked out of the lab they had shared for nearly a decade, leaving behind equipment worth millions of credits and research that could have changed the galaxy. Captain Tony Walsh commanded the evacuation fleet in the Vega system from the bridge of his flagship. Through the view screen, he watched as the massive mining platforms that had operated for 30 years were systematically dismantled. Entire industrial complexes disappeared into the cargo holds of human transport ships. "Sir," his navigation officer reported, "the Kaler representatives are requesting a meeting. They say their economy depends on our mining operations. They're offering to increase our profit share by 20% if we stay." Tony shook his head. "Tell them we appreciate their offer, but our decision is final. All mining operations will cease within 48 hours. The Kyler had built their entire civilization around the rare metals extracted from the Vega asteroid fields. Human technology made the mining profitable and safe. Without it, their industrial base would collapse within months. But that was no longer humanity's concern. "Sir," his communications officer spoke up, "we're receiving increasingly desperate messages from Kaler leadership. They're now offering 50% increases, exclusive trade agreements, even territorial concessions. Should I respond? Negative. Maintain communication silence except for operational necessities. On his tactical display, Tony watched the progress of evacuation fleets throughout human space. Every colony, every station, every outpost reported. The same status, systematic withdrawal proceeding on schedule. The coordination was flawless, suggesting months or even years of preparation. The most traumatic evacuation occurred on New Geneva, humanity's diplomatic world. Ambassador Kate Mitchell supervised the removal of the entire human embassy district. The aliens who lived and worked alongside humans for generations watched in stunned silence as buildings were deconstructed piece by piece. The human embassy itself was a masterpiece of Earth architecture, built from materials transported across the galaxy at enormous expense. The gardens surrounding it contained plants from dozens of human worlds, creating a living museum of human expansion. Even these were being carefully removed and loaded onto transport ships. Kate stood in what had been her office for 12 years. Now, empty except for the communication console she would use to send her final report to Earth. Through her window, she could see alien diplomatic staff gathering in small groups, pointing at the ongoing deconstruction and speaking in rapid, worried tones. Her aide approached with the last batch of classified materials. Madam Ambassador, the Zalari Foreign Minister is requesting an emergency meeting. He says he has authorization to negotiate new terms for human diplomatic status. Kate smiled grimly. I'm sure he does. Tell him I'm unavailable. All diplomatic. Communications should be directed to Earth through normal channels. He's offering to personally guarantee favorable treatment for all human interests if you'll just agree to a brief meeting. The time for meetings has passed, Kate replied. Our position is quite clear. Outside her window, the last of the human-planted trees was being carefully lifted by mechanical arms and placed in a specialized transport container. The aliens watching seemed particularly disturbed by this detail. Taking the buildings was one thing, but taking the very plants suggested a level of finality they had not expected. Kate activated her communication console and sent her final diplomatic message to Earth. New Geneva evacuation complete. All human personnel and materials removed successfully. Local governments expressing confusion and concern about permanence of withdrawal. Recommend maintaining communication silence until Phase 2 implementation. She closed the console, picked up her personal bag, and walked out of the office that had been the center of human diplomacy in this sector of the galaxy. Behind her, the empty room seemed to echo with 12 years of conversations, negotiations, and careful relationship building that now meant nothing. The transport ship carrying the embassy staff lifted off just as the last human building was completely dismantled. From orbit, New Geneva looked like a city with a missing piece, a gap where human influence had simply vanished. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on thousands of worlds. Humans departed with polite efficiency, taking their technology, their expertise, and their economic contribution with them. They left behind confusion, growing panic, and the slow realization that humanity's role in galactic civilization had been far more important than anyone had understood. The evacuation proceeded exactly as planned, with no delays, no exceptions, and no explanations. Within 72 hours of Ambassador Carter's walkout from the council chambers, the human presence in galactic space had been reduced by 90%. Only a few monitoring stations and automated systems remained there, purpose unknown to the increasingly worried alien governments who discovered them. Senator Alan Foster walked through the corridors of the Lunar Command Complex, a facility that officially did not exist. Built deep beneath the surface of the moon, it housed the most classified operations of human intelligence and defense planning. The walls were lined with screens showing data streams from across the galaxy, information gathered by monitoring stations that alien governments had not yet discovered. 6 months had passed since the Great Evacuation, and the reports coming in painted a picture of gradual but accelerating chaos. Foster paused at a tactical display showing the former human sectors of space. Red indicators marked areas where trade routes had collapsed. Yellow warnings highlighted regions experiencing increased pirate activity. Orange alerts showed systems where diplomatic relations between alien species were breaking down. "Senator," his aide approached with the daily intelligence summary, "the situation continues to deteriorate. The Kalar Confederacy has officially requested emergency economic aid from the Council. Their industrial output has dropped by 60% since our mining operations ceased." Foster nodded grimly. The Kalar had built their entire economy around rare metal extraction that required human technology and expertise. Without it, their advanced civilization was slowly grinding to a halt. Similar problems were emerging throughout the galaxy as the full scope of human economic integration became clear. Dr. Helen White worked in a research facility on the far side of the moon, where Earth's greatest minds had been quietly gathered over the past year. The laboratory complex stretched for kilometers beneath the lunar surface, containing projects that would have horrified the Galactic Council if they had known about them. "The quantum displacement drive is ready for full-scale testing," she reported to the Project Oversight Committee. "Without Council restrictions on dimensional manipulation research, we've achieved breakthrough results. The prototype can move a ship instantaneously across distances that would take conventional drives months to cover." The committee members reviewed her data with satisfaction. For decades, human scientific advancement had been limited by Council regulations that deemed certain research too dangerous or ethically questionable. Now, freed from those constraints, human science was leaping forward at unprecedented speed. "What about the cloaking technology?" asked Dr. William Hayes, director of the Weapons Research Division. "Complete success," Helen replied. "Our ships can now become completely undetectable to any known sensor system. The aliens won't even know we're there until we choose to reveal ourselves." Meanwhile, on Earth itself, President Nicole Carter reviewed the latest diplomatic communications from alien governments. Her office walls were lined with monitors, showing message after message from species that had previously condemned human aggression. Now they begged for meetings, trade agreements, and security partnerships. "The Zalari Empire has sent 12 diplomatic requests this week alone," her secretary informed her. "They're offering favorable trade terms, territorial concessions, and formal apologies for past misunderstandings." President Carter laughed coldly. "Misunderstandings? Is that what they're calling decades of systematic persecution now? The Moravian government is being more direct. They're offering to revise the Council Charter to give humanity permanent seats on all major committees, full voting rights, veto power over military decisions, the works." "Too little, too late," Carter replied. "What's the status of the communication?" "Blackout? Complete. No external messages are being answered. As far as the galaxy knows, Earth has gone completely silent. It's causing significant psychological impact among alien populations." The communication blackout was perhaps the most unsettling aspect of humanity's withdrawal. For the first time in galactic history, an entire species had simply stopped talking to the rest of the galaxy. Earth's communication network still functioned perfectly, but they no longer accepted or responded to external signals. Council Chairman Vex Thaler faced the worst crisis of his long career. The council chambers that had once buzzed with confident discussion now echoed with panicked arguments and desperate proposals. The carefully balanced system of galactic governance was falling apart without human participation. "The trade deficit has reached critical levels," reported the VEC economic minister. 17 systems are facing shortages of essential goods that were primarily supplied through human networks. Our own shipping capacity cannot handle the increased load. The security situation is even worse, added the Zalari military representative. Pirate attacks have increased by 300% in former human patrol zones. Our fleets are spread too thin to provide adequate protection. Vex Thaler studied the reports with growing desperation. Every day brought new evidence of how deeply human involvement had been woven into the fabric of galactic civilization. They had not just been members of the galactic community, they had been its backbone. What about the Andromedan situation? He asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. The Andromedans were an extragalactic species that had been probing the galaxy's defenses for decades. Their technology was centuries ahead of anything the Council possessed, and their intentions were clearly hostile. For years, mysterious incidents had kept them at bay. Scout ships that vanished, probing fleets that never returned, sabotage operations that crippled their forward bases. We haven't detected any human activity in the Outer Rim since the evacuation, the military representative admitted. But Andromedan probing has increased significantly. They seem to be testing our defenses more aggressively. Could the humans have been ... bubble quotes Vex Thaler couldn't finish the question. The implications were too disturbing to voice directly. In the Outer Rim territories, automated monitoring stations left behind by humans continued their silent watch. These devices were virtually undetectable and completely autonomous. They recorded everything that happened in their sectors and transmitted the data through quantum channels that alien technology could not. Intercept. Captain Jeff Miller commanded. One of the few human ships that remained in galactic space, a heavily cloaked intelligence vessel that monitored the situation from the shadows. His ship, the Phantom, could observe alien activities without being detected by their most advanced sensors. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving increased chatter from Andromedan forward scouts. They're discussing something called the human withdrawal and debating whether it represents an opportunity for major offensive operations. Miller felt a chill run down his spine. The Andromedans had been watching human activities in the galaxy, and they understood the strategic implications of the evacuation better than the Council did. What's their assessment of current galactic defenses? He asked. They consider them critically weakened and ripe for exploitation. Sir, I think they're planning a full-scale invasion. The pieces of a larger picture were beginning to fall into place. For years, human military activities that the Council had condemned as aggressive expansion had actually been defensive preparations against external threats. Human colonies in disputed territories had been forward observation posts. Human military buildup had been preparation for conflicts that never materialized because the Andromedans had been deterred by human strength. Back on Luna, Senator Foster reviewed intelligence reports that confirmed his worst fears. The Andromedans have been waiting for this, he told his staff. Every aggressive action the Council condemned was actually part of our defense strategy against extragalactic invasion. We were protecting them, and they never even knew it. What are our orders regarding the situation? His aide asked. Foster looked at the tactical displays showing increasing Andromedan activity along the galactic rim. Continue monitoring. But remember, we are no longer responsible for galactic security. That was made very clear when they demanded we disarm and withdraw. Even if billions of innocent beings are at risk? Especially then, Foster replied. Coldly, they wanted us gone. They got their wish. Now they can deal with the consequences. The greatest irony was that the Council's demands had been precisely what the Andromedans had hoped for. By forcing humanity to disarm and withdraw, the Council had eliminated the one force that had kept the galaxy safe from external threats. In their arrogance and prejudice, they had doomed themselves. As the months passed, the signs became impossible to ignore. Trade networks collapsed without human shipping. Security deteriorated without human patrols. Scientific advancement slowed without human research partnerships. Most ominously, the mysterious incidents that had kept hostile forces at bay stopped occurring entirely. The galaxy that had celebrated humanity's departure was slowly beginning to understand what they had lost. But understanding came too late, and the darkness between the stars was already moving. General Barry Stone stood before the massive holographic display in the Mars Command Center, watching the galaxy tear itself apart. 2 years had passed since humanity's withdrawal, and the tactical map before him showed a civilization in collapse. Red zones marked active conflicts, yellow areas indicated economic breakdown, and orange sectors showed refugee movements that numbered in the billions. "Sir," his aide approached with the latest intelligence reports. "The Jilari Empire has begun its expansion into the former human territories. 3 systems have fallen in the past month. The local populations are fleeing toward council space, but there aren't enough ships to evacuate them all." Stone nodded grimly. The Jilari had always been aggressive, but human military presence had kept their ambitions in check. Now, with no one to stop them, they were seizing every system they could reach. Their fleets encountered no resistance in the abandoned human colonies, but their expansion was creating a humanitarian crisis of unprecedented scale. "What's the status of the Council's response?" Stone asked. "Chaos. The Vec want to send their fleet to stop the Jilari expansion, but the Moravians refuse to support military action without human backing. The Crystalline Consortium is threatening to withdraw from the Council entirely if their trade routes aren't protected. It's complete political paralysis." Dr. Amy Clark worked in the asteroid belt facility known as Forge Station, where humanity's most advanced weapons research took place. The laboratory complex was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, invisible to external observation, and powered by fusion reactors that left no detectable signature. "The particle beam array is ready for deployment," she reported to the Weapons Development Committee. "It can disable enemy ships without destroying them, or completely vaporize targets if necessary. The range exceeds anything we've built before." "What about the defensive applications?" asked the committee chairman. "Even better. We can create energy barriers that will stop any known weapon system. The technology is based on dimensional folding, theory that the Council banned 15 years ago. They called it too dangerous for civilized species to possess." The committee members exchanged satisfied looks. The Council's restrictions on human scientific research had been extensive and frustrating. They had banned genetic enhancement, dimensional manipulation, advanced artificial intelligence, and dozens of other fields that they considered too risky. Now humanity was free to explore every avenue of scientific advancement, and the results were spectacular. Meanwhile, Council Chairman Vex Thaler faced a chamber filled with panic and recrimination. The elegant debates and diplomatic protocols they had once defined council sessions were replaced by desperate arguments and accusations. The galactic government that had ruled for centuries was falling apart. "The situation is spiraling beyond our control," reported the Emergency Committee on Galactic Security. 17 separate conflicts have erupted in the power vacuum left by human withdrawal. Our peacekeeping forces are stretched beyond their limits. The economic situation is even worse, added the trade minister. The shipping networks that humans maintained have collapsed. Systems that depended on regular supply deliveries are facing starvation. The Kaler Confederacy is in complete economic freefall. Vex Thaler studied the reports with growing horror. Every prediction about the consequences of human withdrawal had been wrong. They had expected some minor disruptions, perhaps a brief period of adjustment as other species took over human responsibilities. Instead, they were witnessing the systematic collapse of galactic civilization. "What about diplomatic contact with Earth?" he asked desperately. "Surely they can be convinced to provide limited assistance?" We could offer them favorable terms, formal apologies, anything they want. No response to any communications, the diplomatic minister replied. Earth's communication networks are completely closed to external contact. It's as if humanity has simply vanished from the galaxy. The breaking point came when long-range sensors detected massive fleet movements in the galactic outer rim. The readings were unlike anything in Council databases. Ships that were larger, faster, and more heavily armed than anything known to galactic science. Sir, the sensor technician's voice carried barely controlled panic. We're detecting an invasion. Fleet approaching from extragalactic space. The energy signatures are consistent with Andromedan technology, but the scale is enormous. Thousands of ships, maybe tens of thousands. The chamber fell silent. The Andromedans were the nightmare scenario that every galactic leader feared, but hoped would never come. For decades, they had probed the galaxy's defenses, testing for weaknesses while building their forces for a full-scale invasion. The only thing that had kept them at bay was the mysterious incidents that destroyed their scout fleets and sabotaged their forward bases. How long until they reach inhabited systems? Vex Thaler asked. 6 months, maybe less. Their technology is far superior to our fastest ships. What are our defensive capabilities? The military committee exchanged uncomfortable glances. Limited. Our combined fleets might slow them down, but we lack the technology and coordination for effective resistance. The humans were always our primary military force multiplier. Their tactical innovations, their weapon systems, their ability to coordinate multi-species operations. We built our entire defense strategy around human capabilities. In the depths of space, Captain Jeff Miller's cloaked ship continued its surveillance mission. The Phantom remained undetected while monitoring the approaching Andromedan fleet, and what Miller saw filled him with dread. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we're looking at the largest military force in recorded galactic history. Initial count shows over 50,000 warships, plus support vessels and troop transports. This isn't a raid or a probing attack. This is a full conquest fleet. Miller studied the tactical display with professional interest. The Andromedan formation was perfect. Their technology was centuries ahead of anything the Council possessed, and their numbers were overwhelming. Against such a force, the fractured and weakened galactic defense would collapse within weeks. What's their estimated target? He asked. They're heading directly for the core worlds. Maximum psychological impact. If they can take the Council, capital, and the major population centers, organized resistance will be impossible. Any indication they know about our presence? Negative. Their communications reference the human withdrawal as a strategic opportunity. They've been waiting for this moment, sir. They planned their invasion timing around our evacuation. The terrible irony was becoming clear. The Andromedans had understood something the Council never grasped. Humanity had been the galaxy's primary defense against external threats. Every human military action that the Council had condemned as aggressive had actually been part of a comprehensive defense strategy against extragalactic invasion. On Mars, General Stone received the intelligence reports from Captain Miller with cold satisfaction. So the Andromedans finally feel confident enough to move openly. They've been planning this invasion for decades, waiting for the right moment to strike. Should we warn the Council? His aide asked. Stone's expression was hard as steel. The Council made their position very clear. They wanted humanity disarmed and withdrawn from galactic affairs. They got exactly what they asked for. But, sir, billions of innocent beings will die. Entire civilizations will be destroyed. That's no longer our concern. We offered our protection, and they rejected it. We offered our partnership, and they spurned it. We offered our strength, and they called it aggression. Now they can face the consequences of their choices. The first Andromedan attacks began. 3 months ahead of schedule. Their advanced scouts struck isolated systems in the outer rim, testing galactic response capabilities. The results were devastating. Systems that had once been protected by human patrol fleets fell within hours. The Andromedans' technology was so advanced that galactic defenders couldn't even damage their ships. News of the attacks spread panic throughout Council space. Refugee fleets began fleeing toward the inner systems, carrying reports of unstoppable alien technology and the complete destruction of entire worlds. The exodus created massive humanitarian crises as systems struggled to house and feed billions of displaced beings. The Moravian homeworld is requesting immediate evacuation assistance, reported the Council Emergency Coordinator. Their defenses lasted less than 6 hours against a single Andromedan battle group. What about Tech Prime? Bexthaler asked. Already evacuated. The government fled before the Andromedans arrived. The planet's industrial infrastructure was completely destroyed. In the Mars Command Center, General Stone watched the tactical displays with professional detachment. The collapse was proceeding exactly as human strategic planners had predicted. Without coordinated defense, without advanced technology, and without the will to fight desperately against overwhelming odds, the galactic civilizations were simply rolling over and dying. "Sir," his communications officer announced, "we're receiving thousands of desperate messages from Council governments. They're begging for human intervention, offering complete surrender of authority, unlimited resources, anything we want if we'll just help them." Intelligence Officer Chris Miller sat in the hidden monitoring station beyond the galactic rim, surrounded by banks of quantum communication equipment that could intercept signals across impossible distances. His facility existed in the void, between galaxies, a place so empty and cold that no alien species had ever thought to look there. For 3 years, he had been listening to Andromedan military communications, and what he heard chilled him to the bone. The latest intercepted transmission crackled through the speakers in their original language before the translation system converted it to English. Command confirms the Void Walkers have abandoned their positions. All defensive networks in the target galaxy show no human presence. Probability of successful invasion now exceeds 97%. Miller leaned forward, adjusting the signal filters to capture more detail. The Andromedans had dozens of names for humanity, but Void Walkers was the most common. It carried connotations of fear that the translation systems couldn't fully convey. Analysis of human withdrawal patterns suggests permanent abandonment. Of galactic defense responsibilities, another voice continued, Scout reports confirm complete absence of human military presence in former patrol zones. The prey species are defenseless. The conversation continued with details that made Miller's blood run cold. Fleet Admiral Kethvar reports successful. Elimination of human forward observation posts in Sector 7 through 12. No resistance encountered. The Void Walkers appear to have truly withdrawn from galactic affairs. Miller knew those observation posts. They had been disguised as mining stations and research facilities, staffed by volunteers who knew they might never return home. For 20 years, they had provided early warning about Andromedan activities, while maintaining perfect cover stories that fooled even galactic intelligence services. Strategic analysis confirms our long-held assessment, the transmission continued. Human military doctrine was specifically designed to counter our invasion strategies. Their seemingly random expansion patterns actually created overlapping defensive zones that would have made conquest extremely costly. Their withdrawal removes the primary obstacle to galactic subjugation. The truth hit Miller like a physical blow. Everything the Galactic Council had condemned about human behavior, the aggressive expansion, the military buildup, the refusal to accept limitations on defensive preparations, had been carefully calculated moves in a chess game played across centuries. Humanity had been preparing for an invasion that most galactic species didn't even know was coming. Back in the Sol system, President Nicole Carter reviewed the intelligence reports from beyond the galactic rim with grim satisfaction. The Oval Office had been relocated to a bunker complex beneath the Rocky Mountains, one of dozens of command centers built in preparation for the current crisis. The Andromedans have been planning this invasion for over 200 years, she told her National Security Council. Every human colony that the Council called an illegal expansion was actually a strategic defensive position. Every military exercise they condemned was training for the war we knew was coming. What about the galactic response to the invasion? Asked Secretary of Defense Robert Lee. Complete collapse. 18 major systems have fallen in the past month. The Council. Governments are fleeing toward the inner rim, but they won't find safety there. The Andromedans aren't interested in negotiations or conditional surrender. They intend to wipe out galactic civilization entirely. Are we receiving requests for assistance? Carter's expression hardened. Thousands of them. Every species that spent decades condemning our militarism is now begging for our protection. The Zelari are offering to make humanity the ruling species of their empire. The Vec want to surrender their entire military to human command. It's almost amusing if it weren't so pathetic. In the hidden archives beneath Geneva, Dr. Patricia White cataloged the evidence that would eventually tell the true story of humanity's role in galactic affairs. The documents she preserved painted a picture of a species that had sacrificed everything to protect neighbors who despised them for it. The Kepler colony incident from 15 years ago, she dictated to her recording. System. The Council condemned humanity for establishing an illegal military outpost in disputed territory. Classified records show the colony was actually built to intercept Andromedan scout fleets, using that system as a staging area. Over 40 enemy reconnaissance ships were destroyed by operations launched from Kepler colony. She moved to the next file in the massive collection, the Vega mining expansion that caused such controversy in the Council. Public records show humanity extracting rare metals for aggressive military buildup. Actual purpose was acquiring materials needed for quantum jamming systems that prevented Andromedan infiltration of galactic communication networks. File after file revealed the same pattern. Every human action that the Council had found threatening or objectionable had actually been part of a comprehensive defense strategy against external invasion. The species that had called humans paranoid and aggressive had been protected by that very paranoia and aggression without ever knowing it. On the Andromedan flagship, Supreme Commander Yax Cthulhu studied tactical displays showing the rapid collapse of galactic civilization. His species had evolved in the void between galaxies, developing technology and survival instincts that made them perfect predators of younger civilizations. The human factor has been eliminated more completely than we dared hope, he reported. To the High Command, their withdrawal was not a tactical repositioning, but genuine abandonment of defensive responsibilities. The prey species fight with obsolete technology and no coordination. Resistance is minimal. What of the humans themselves? Asked the voice from the High Command. Intelligence reports suggest they have retreated to their home system. Are they a threat to our consolidation efforts? Negligible. Our analysis shows they lack the numbers for effective resistance once we control galactic infrastructure. A single battle group can handle their remaining forces after the primary conquest is complete. The irony was perfect. The Andromedans understood humanity's strategic importance better than the species humanity had been protecting. They had studied human defensive patterns for generations, developing countermeasures and waiting patiently for the right moment to strike. That moment had come when the Galactic Council drove humanity away. Back on Luna, Senator Alan Foster watched real-time intelligence feeds showing the systematic destruction of galactic civilization. The species that had once filled council chambers with proud speeches about their advanced cultures and peaceful intentions, were now fleeing in panic or dying in hopeless battles against technologically superior invaders. The Crystalline Consortium has officially dissolved, his aide reported. Their remaining ships are scattered across 50 systems with no central command. The Vorthan trade networks have collapsed completely. Even the Vec military, which was considered the most professional force in the galaxy, has been reduced to scattered guerrilla units. Any change in Earth's communication policy? Foster asked. None. All external messages continue to be blocked. As far as the galaxy knows, humanity has simply vanished. The psychological impact on alien populations is severe. Many are beginning to believe that humans were the only thing standing between them and extinction. They're not wrong, Foster replied coldly. The question is whether they deserve to learn that lesson the hard way. On Mars, General Barry Stone received a priority communication from Deep Space Reconnaissance. Captain Jeff Miller's cloaked ship had intercepted something extraordinary, internal, Andromedan communications revealing their true assessment of human capabilities. Sir, Miller's report began. You need to hear this. The Andromedans have been studying us for over 3 centuries. They consider humanity the most dangerous species they've ever encountered. Their entire invasion strategy was built around the assumption that humans would be defending the galaxy. Stone activated the recording Miller had transmitted. The voice belonged to an Andromedan strategic analyst, speaking to what appeared to be a war college or training facility. The humans represent a unique threat profile, the translated voice explained. Unlike other galactic species, they do not seek conquest for resources or territory. They fight for abstract concepts like freedom and justice, which makes them unpredictable and extremely dangerous. Their tactical adaptability exceeds any species in our database. The recording continued with details that would have flattered human military leaders if the circumstances had been different. Human defensive doctrine emphasizes redundancy, rapid adaptation, and willingness to accept massive casualties in pursuit of strategic objectives. They are the only species we have observed that becomes more dangerous when cornered rather than less so. Most concerning is their technological development pattern. While other species focus on gradual, predictable advancement, humans demonstrate breakthrough innovation under pressure. Their weapons and defensive systems often incorporate principles that our science cannot fully explain.